It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Chaos on the beaches as families scramble to boats attempting to cross the channel to make it to the UK. And hundreds of people are intercepted by the UK Border Force. On board the Beast, the freight train used by migrants to move from Mexico to America, subjected to electric shocks, beatings and brandings.
There's stories of rape and many people have died riding it. But it's cheap, well, it's free, and it is the quickest way to get across Mexico.
Also tonight, Rishi Sunak campaigns in Tory heartlands as a poll projects the Tories will be left with just 115 seats. Putin receives a warm welcome as he arrives in North Korea for the first time in more than 20 years. A breakthrough in detecting Parkinson's, which could help towards treating the disease in the future. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. Sky News has witnessed migrant families in France desperately trying to get on board a boat to cross the channel. The people hoping to reach the UK shores were watched by the French police, unable to stop the smugglers. The UK's border force intercepted hundreds of people, bringing them into Dover today. Well, the number of people forced to flee their homes because of violence, persecution or climate change has been rising since 2012. Last year, it hit a record high of more than 117 million. Well, today, Sky News has been reporting on migration from around the world. Coming up, we'll hear from people risking their lives on board the train named the Beast in Mexico, and from Italy, where a number of people are missing. But our first report is from our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, close to the fortified French town of Gravelines.
It's 4 a.m. and the people smugglers are out on the beaches of northern France. As we watch, a dinghy draws up and dozens of people climb aboard. It's fast and efficient. The boat leaves and the smugglers wave off their clients, now heading towards the UK, and then they run off. Stop. The sea is calm and today business is booming. Approaching the shore, a dinghy with 5 smugglers on board. In essence, it's a taxi boat coming to collect. A police boat makes waves to try to block the dinghy's route, but it gets past, and the smugglers beckon the crowds of hopeful migrants. There's a surge, a rush to get to the boat. Children and babies are carried. Life jackets thrown on. A woman drifts away. She's struggling to swim. She will eventually be pulled aboard the boat by the smugglers. And watching from the beach, a long line of police who monitor, but under French law, can't intervene. It's hard to think of a more brazen example of people smuggling across the channel. Look over there, there are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by a police boat out in the sea and by dozens of French police officers on the beach. The final people drag themselves up onto the boat. Back on the beach, there are plenty who didn't make it. Rabaz is travelling with his wife and 2 small children. They've come from Iraq, intent on getting to Britain. How many times have you tried to cross
4
to Britain?
times.
4 times.
Yes, and I am still trying.
And you will try again?
Yeah, of course.
And
because I don't have any solution. I know very dangerous for me, for my children. I know this one. But when I don't have any solution, I will try.
it's a belief that fuels channel migration, that getting to Britain will make your life better. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Calais.
At least 17 people have died and around 60 are missing after two incidents reported yesterday off southern Italy. One boat was intercepted off the island of Lampedusa with 51 survivors and 10 bodies on board. And off the coast of Calabria, a yacht overturned, which had come from Turkey. 7 people died and dozens more are missing. Our international correspondent John Sparks reports now from Calabria.
It seems tranquil enough. But these waters form part of the most dangerous migration route in the world. The shoreline of southern Italy, the objective of so many who put to sea. This sailboat, a recreational vessel with a single mast, didn't make it. It was packed with 74 migrants, people from Iraq, Iran and Syria, who boarded the craft in Turkey. 8 days passed before another vessel offered them assistance. Red Cross officials in southern Italy said 11 survived, and it's clear they suffered greatly at sea.
All 11 migrants who arrived here have multiple fractures, severe dehydration, severe bruises. From what they say, they were in shock, with clear signs of burns. I have no words for those who didn't reach the port.
The survivors include a pregnant woman and a child, now orphaned. And the details of their ordeal are both extraordinary and absolutely typical. We've made contact with one of the survivors, a young Kurdish woman from Iraq who's currently being looked after in one of the local hospitals. And she has told us that she and the other passengers on that boat were duped. They were lied to from the very beginning.
The smugglers told us not to bring any food because it had everything. After that, we ran out and shared what we had. Nothing was left on the boat, no water, no food, nothing.
The captain tried to open a box of provisions, she says, but there was an explosion and the boat capsized. The migrants then spent 4 days in the water.
We stayed on the water for 4 days and no one came to help us. 2 to 3 boats passed by and they got very close. We shouted a lot for help, but they ignored us and passed by.
The EU has changed the way it runs and patrols its borders. New policies are tougher, harsher. Politicians say the number of migrants must come down, and here the local mayor agrees.
As for the numbers, there's been a massive increase in the last few years, from 600 to 8,000 saved last year.
Mayor Zito says they welcome everyone who comes to Roccella Ionica. It's part of their tradition. But that welcome is wearing thin in much of Europe. The political imperative is to keep migrants out. But the consequences of that may prove deadly. John Sparks, Sky News in southern Italy.
Well, live now to our correspondents, Adam Parsons in Sangatte in France and James Matthews in Washington. And Adam, to you first, there were desperate scenes that you witnessed in France today. It seems that the deterrents put in place by this government might still not be having the desired effect.
Yeah, I think that's right. Today we saw some pretty extraordinary scenes. We're just staying on one patch of one beach and saw boat after boat in the sea ahead of us. And the simple fact was that the people smugglers have found a way around the French law, because instead of bringing a boat down the beach, inflating it on the beach and putting themselves at risk of police officers coming along and seeing but they have a boat and slicing it open. Well, they don't do that now. They bring out what are called taxi boats because they know the police won't go into the sea. In other words, the boat comes out, doesn't come onto the beach, it gestures towards the migrants who are on the beach, they run out, get on the boat, and it can steam away. And the police, as we saw today, dozens of them watching, effectively powerless to intervene. I think that tells you one thing. I think the sheer determination that we have witnessed among people who are still willing to put themselves and their lives at risk and the lives of their loved ones in order to get to Britain is another significant factor. The question of deterrence, well, I think the Rwanda scheme may have been briefly, frankly, a slight deterrence for a small number of people. I don't think we ever saw any evidence that that was going to be a significant factor in stopping people. The simple fact is, it's about demand and supply. There are still lots of people who are fleeing countries either because of persecution or because they want to build themselves a better life. That's how they say it in Britain. And there is a supply of people smugglers very willing for a price to take people from here to over there and the British shoreline.
And James, they're in Washington. Migration, a big election issue in the US too.
Hi, Anna. Yeah, Joe Biden is overseeing a broken immigration system and he is trying desperately to mend it. What he's done today is to address the issue of people who enter the United States illegally over the years. 500,000 people of them, 500,000 of them, who are married to American citizens. Now, the situation up until now has been that for them to get citizenship or to be here legally, they've had to leave the country and apply from outside. That's problematic because they're split up from their families and face the uncertainty of whether or not they will get back in to the United States. You're talking about 500,000 people and 50,000 children in those particular households. Joe Biden, in a news conference today, has said he's changing the rules. Now those 500,000 people won't have to leave the United States to apply for a green card and put themselves on a pathway towards citizenship.
These couples have been raising families, sending their kids to church and school, paying taxes, contributing to our country for 10 years or more. Matter of fact, the average time they've spent here is 23 years, the people we're affecting today. But living in the United States all this time with this fear and uncertainty, we can fix that. And that's what I'm going to do today. Fix it.
Joe Biden there this evening. Adam and James, thank you. Well, thousands of migrants also try to reach the US illegally from Mexico every day. Attempted crossings reached a new high in December, with more than 300,000 people arriving at the border. Many make a journey of nearly 2,000 miles, travelling on foot or on freight trains, passing through a number of immigration checkpoints on their journey. But many are being pushed back violently by Mexican authorities before the border. Our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, and his team travelled with a group of migrants on a train to Chihuahua in northern Mexico.
The tension ripples through the migrants. The beast is coming. A freight train heading north towards the United States. In the dark of night, they chase the slowing train, then clamber aboard as it stops. It's chaotic. The beast is dangerous for sure, but they are desperate.
They didn't think it was going to stop, but it has. And a scrambling on board. This is the sort of truck they're looking for because they can actually get inside. They don't know how long they got. It's all a bit panicky, but of course you can sense the euphoria. Now, of course, they have no idea how far they're going to get down the track, but as far as they're concerned, it's a start.
Within 2 hours, an immigration checkpoint stops the train. Neither Mexico or the United States want migrants to make this journey to the border. They're forced off. Many are clearly terrified. Emily is taken from her mother, Alejandra. She's held by an immigration officer. That is abject fear. She is 2 years old. Reunited on the tracks, they're told to walk. Alejandra is distressed. In the chaos, she's lost her husband and second daughter.
I want to know where my husband is, my daughter. How am I going to continue traveling with just this bottle of water, without food, without money and without anything?
The family are eventually reunited and disappear into the darkness. Venezuelan migrants, far from home. Some refuse to leave. They're in the last 2 cars and shout at the officers to let them continue. Probably because of our presence, the Mexican authorities withdraw and the train continues northwards. What we have seen and what we have been told is new. The migrants are being prevented from getting to the United States border, sometimes violently. On the side of a track, we find a small group who've just been kicked off a train. Rominger has been hit over the head with a metal bar by Mexican officers. He and his wife are Colombian. Naomi is 8 months pregnant. Officers use a cattle prod to get her off the train. 5 times they put an electric shock on you. You're clearly pregnant.
When I saw that my husband was hurt, I tried to defend him, obviously, because he is my husband. Then they told me to shut up. I better not say anything. They insulted me and gave me electric shocks.
Roxana Malave's husband, Jose, was beaten unconscious and has disappeared. She's left on the track with her 2 children. They're from Venezuela.
They gave him electric shocks and they broke his mouth. He was carrying our little boy and they still beat him up. They hit him. They hit him with a black thing. They poke him in the back. They punch him everywhere. Then they made him stand up on the train and they threw him down the train.
With help from a local charity, Jose is found a few hours later and reunited with his family. He's beaten and needs help to walk. More shocking, though, is this. Cut into his back are the letters MX for Mexico. He's been branded. Despite the new interventions by the Mexican authorities to thwart them, their inexorable move north goes on. We met Naomi again, boarding the Beast. It's a high-speed freight train heading north to the city of Chihuahua. The migrants are on the roof.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the Beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Obviously, we're high up, we're travelling on a train. There's obviously the problem for them of immigration, but also they're prey to the many gangs that control huge areas of Mexico. They often get robbed on this train. There's stories of rape, and many people have died riding it. But it's cheap, well, it's free, and it is the quickest way to get across Mexico.
We race through towns and cities. It's both beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. 12 hours later, we arrive and the migrants dismount. Climbing down the Beast, they're already planning their next leg. The migrants seem to have no rights in Mexico. America doesn't want them on the border and Mexico is obstructing their movement. But it's not solving the problem. They are here. Naomi and Rominger, like all the others, keep going. Is this where their dreams begin, so near to the United States? Or is it where their dream ends? They just don't know. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Mexico.
And Sky News will have more on migration tomorrow. Our Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch meets an agent in Vietnam, charging tens of thousands of pounds to smuggle people to the UK.
Do you worry about the people crossing, that they might get hurt?
Back here now, and a new poll out today suggests the Conservatives will be left with just 115 seats. But Rishi Sunak said the choice is crystal clear while pushing a lower taxes pledge when out campaigning in Devon today, traditionally a Conservative heartland. Well, the new poll suggests Labour is on track to win 453 seats. The projection gives Labour a majority of 256, with the Conservatives left with just 115, potentially the Tories' worst result ever. Sky's political correspondent, Darren McCaffrey, has been with the Prime Minister today and has this report.
Come on! For 4 weeks, the Prime Minister's been desperately trying to coax back Conservative voters. But so far, they're just not having any of it. Today, though, he was joined for the first time by a predecessor.
I'm here fighting for every vote, for every seat.
With Lord Cameron mucking in even with the most traditional of Conservative voters. One former Prime Minister, though, who's been almost entirely absent is Boris Johnson, spending more time on holiday in the past month than he has campaigning. But it's something Rishi Sunak says he doesn't recognise.
Well, it's great that Boris is supporting the Conservative Party. I very much welcome that. He's endorsing many candidates in videos and letters which have been coordinated by the campaign. I know that will make a difference. And of course, every week he's making the case in his column.
Hello. Hi. And from one pub in southern England to another, increasingly confident Labour are now focusing on a wide range of Tory seats, today offering retail commitments.
I'm really pleased today to be unveiling our plan for supporting small businesses, for supporting high streets, to make sure that more people are out using those small businesses on their high streets. It's all part of our manifesto, which is a manifesto for wealth creation.
There's one down to us.
And for the Lib Dem leader, also in a marginal, he's sticking to a simple strategy of carefully targeting primarily Conservative seats in what was once the blue wall.
The Conservatives have failed our country, that's really clear, and perhaps they're beginning to realise what a bad job they've done on the economy, on the health service, on our environment. They are out of ideas, they are out of excuses, and they need to be out of office.
This election has set a different course from 2019. With a rocky campaign and a Conservative Party far behind in the polls, there are fewer battleground visits. Rather, Rishi Sunak has been heading deeper and deeper into safe, true blue Conservative constituencies, trying to catch the few remaining undecided voters. Karen McCaffrey, Sky News, North Devon.
Well, let's go to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's in Westminster. Another devastating poll for Rishi Sunak, John, and more bad news from a Tory donor.
A devastating poll, yes, and a devastating indictment on the Prime Minister from John Caldwell. He's the billionaire Tory donor who founded Phones for You. He gave £500,000 to the Conservatives in the run-up to the 2019 election. Now, that poll by Ipsos, a mega poll of 20,000 or so, puts the Labour on 43%, Tories on 25%. Another poll's got Labour tonight, has got Labour on 40%, Conservatives on 21%. But Mr Caldwell has hit out here, announcing that he's backing Labour. He says that he's been critical of Tory failings since the last election, he says. And he singles out Rishi Sunak, he says, for his mismanagement of the economy during COVID. He doesn't approve of the furlough scheme. He talks about Boris Johnson lowering ethical standards. He also talks about cronies improperly obtaining PPE contracts during the pandemic as well. And also what he describes as the Liz Truss debacle. Now, in an interview to mark his defection, he praises Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, and he describes the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, as an absolute dud.
John Craig in Westminster, thank you. The American singer Justin Timberlake has been arrested and charged with drink driving in New York State. The 43-year-old singer was stopped by police after leaving a restaurant on Long Island after having dinner with friends. Authorities said he was charged after failing to obey a stop sign and veering out of the correct lane. That mugshot released this evening. The Crown Prosecution Service says it will not bring criminal charges against 4 Metropolitan Police officers involved in the original Stephen Lawrence murder investigation. The 18-year-old was murdered in a racist attack in Eltham in southeast London in April 1993. Stephen's mother, Baroness Doreen Lawrence, said she was bewildered and angry by the decision, which she said marked a new low in how her family had been treated by the criminal justice system. Sir Ian McKellen says he's looking forward to returning to work and is expecting to make a full recovery after falling off stage at London's Noel Coward Theatre last night. The 85-year-old was acting in a fight scene during a performance of Player Kings and appeared to lose his footing. North Korean state media has said that a meeting between President Putin and Kim Jong-un demonstrates the invincibility and durability of the two countries' relations. The Russian president has arrived tonight in North Korea for a two-day summit with Kim Jong-un in his first visit to the country in 24 years. Sky's Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett reports a warning his report does contain some flash photography.
They are two hard-man leaders with a soft spot for each other. Vladimir Putin arriving in North Korea tonight and stepping in to its warm embrace. Kim Jong-un quite literally rolled out the red carpet for Russia's president on what is only his second ever visit to the country. His first trip was nearly a quarter of a century ago. So why now? Isolated from the West, Russia is looking for new friends, and it certainly seems to have found that here. So friendly, in fact, they couldn't decide who should enter the car first to leave the airport. And there were more friends on the way into Pyongyang. State visits don't happen very often here, and they're making the most of it. As Vladimir Putin thanked his host for the hospitality, the West will be wondering what else North Korea might be giving their visitor, fearing they're already sending Russia weapons and ammunition to use in Ukraine.
We've seen, as you've said, Russia try in desperation to develop and to strengthen relations with countries that can provide it with what it needs to continue the war of aggression that it started against Ukraine. So we are very much concerned about this because this is what's keeping the war going.
And there's also concern about what Kim Jong-un might be getting in return. Both Russia and North Korea deny they're trading weapons, insisting they're just two neighbours forging closer ties. They're certainly doing that. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Scientists are hopeful that a new blood test could predict if you're going to develop Parkinson's disease years before symptoms occur. The disease affects more than 150,000 people in the UK and is currently the world's fastest growing neurodegenerative disorder. Detecting it early could pave the way for better treatments. Sky's science and technology editor Tom Clark has more.
Well done, guys!
Been diagnosed for over 9 years, and fortunately for me it's been relatively slow, but I'm convinced that having a positive attitude and exercise combined makes a big difference.
Since his Parkinson's diagnosis, Gary Shaughnessy has completed 50 marathons. Extreme as exercise regimes go, but it's helped him manage the tremor, muscle weakness and balance problems caused by the condition.
I hate having this condition. I don't want other people to have this condition or have to put up with it for, in the same numbers that we've got today.
A cure remains elusive, but there's now hope a test may be able to predict who will get Parkinson's years before symptoms emerge. And that could be a big step towards treatments for the progressive neurodegenerative disease.
There are loads of trials for Parkinson's disease, ASO therapies, immunotherapies, which are underway. But we're looking at patients who do have the disease. So in a way, you're shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. Really what you want to do is have those patients earlier on, before they have the symptoms, enrolled in the trials, to see if you can delay the onset of Parkinson's disease.
Even using state-of-the-art equipment that can profile disease-linked proteins in the blood, the signature of Parkinson's is so complex, it took artificial intelligence to find it. It analysed thousands of proteins from the blood of hundreds of thousands of people with and without Parkinson's disease. And the AI was able to do what a human scientist couldn't, and identify a specific pattern in those protein profiles in the blood samples. Alone, those proteins could point towards new targets for Parkinson's treatments, but as a predictive test, could help recruit patients into drug trials before Parkinson's begins to cause damage to the brain. There is an ethical question about testing for a condition for which there's currently no cure, but as far as Gary Shaughnessy's concerned, it would be worth it.
If we can make progress on a cure, on treatments, then it may be too late, it may be too far down the line from my perspective, but if we can do something for other people, that would be brilliant.
This is the final lap.
There's a way to go before a validated test, let alone new treatments, result from this. In the meantime, Gary will continue his race against Parkinson's. Tom Clark, Sky News.
Now, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh have released a new image to mark their silver wedding anniversary. The image of Edward and Sophie, who are celebrating 25 years of married life, was taken in the grounds of their home, Bagshot Park in Surrey. The Duke has described his wife as his rock, and on his recent 60th birthday, Sophie described him as the best of fathers, the most loving of husbands, and still my best friend. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by Ali Mirage, broadcaster and commentator, and Sonia Soda, chief lead writer at The Observer. Welcome to both of you. And certainly among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front page of the Financial Times. Its headline that Tory hopefuls are jockeying for position as the post-poll race to succeed Rishi Sunak looms. Back with that and more after this. Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, our top stories this evening. Sky News has witnessed chaotic scenes in France as families with young children try to scramble into boats to cross the channel to the UK. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in North Korea for 2 days of talks with its leader there, Kim Jong-un. And researchers say they've used artificial intelligence to identify Parkinson's disease using a simple blood test 7 years before symptoms appear. Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with Ali Miraj, broadcaster and commentator, and Sonia Soda, chief leader writer at The Observer. Welcome to both of you. As ever, crack on with the front pages first of all, starting with the Financial Times. The race to replace Rishi Sunak as Conservative Party leader is apparently already underway, with some MPs courting others to build support. Daily Mail focusing on Labour and what they are calling a secret tax rise dossier, a proposal they say from MPs, including Sir Keir Starmer, to increase 6 taxes. The Times also reports on Labour, specifically on Starmer defining working people as those who can't afford to write a cheque when they get into trouble. The Guardian on Labour too, their pledge to cut hospital waiting times by buying beds in care homes. Front of the Telegraph has this story on cancer care, with a report that survival rates in Britain are 20 years behind other European countries. The Eye leading with a report that the government has held private talks over fears of disruption to public services by its IT contractor. Front of the Metro, a forensic accountant who investigated the Post Office's Horizon IT system has called the scandal a criminal conspiracy. Well, a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Ali Miraj and Sonia Soda. Welcome properly to both of you. Well, very interesting bunch of newspapers, I have to say. So shall we start with the Financial Times? Sonia, why don't you kick off?
Sure.
This is the suggestion that they're already scrabbling about the Tory leadership.
Yeah, so this is a story from Lucy Fisher, who is the Whitehall editor of the FT, and she's reporting on what she's hearing from MPs about all the movements that are going on behind the scenes. Some of them seem to think it's a matter of when, not if, the Conservatives lose the election. Obviously, we couldn't possibly comment. That is rather what the polls are suggesting. But yes, apparently, leadership hopefuls, and, you know, it does really feel like we've been in a bit of a phony war, I would say, over the last year with, you know, people who clearly want to lead the Conservative Party out the next election, who are expecting a bad result, setting out their stall in recent months. But apparently, some of them are putting key aids in place. They are sort of reaching out to MPs, particularly MPs in safe seats, because, of course, the landscape could look very different for a Conservative Party after the general election. And that's both because some of the people who may hope to take over from Rishi Sunak, we're talking about, might actually lose their seats. I mean, some of them, Penny Mordaunt, Grant Shapps, they are in seats that 2 or 3 years ago would have been quite safe territory for the Conservatives. Now they're kind of battleground seats. But also, you're going to have probably, if the polls are right, a much reduced rump of Conservative MPs in Parliament. So all of a sudden, you know, you're competing. It's the MPs who are key to get the top 2 candidates for leader that go on a ballot to Conservative Party members. And so there were probably going to be fewer MPs whose votes they can compete between. So, you know, some people might say it's politics, others might say it's quite shameless, given the general election hasn't happened yet, but apparently these conversations are going on behind the scenes.
I mean, this is sort of strangely awkward, because you could be putting your name in the ring when you lose your seat, or putting your name in a ring to someone who then loses their seat. You know, this is the... I mean, Ali, you look defeated. I'm really sorry.
I mean, look, I've been there before. I've seen it all before. Normally, there's an element of decency.
Perhaps not to these levels. I mean,
No,
if we look at the... We'll come on to the latest
pretty
poll.
dire levels in 97 and 2001. Normally, there's an element of etiquette and decency that you ostensibly at least wait until the election's happened before you start this jockeying for position. But it's going to be very interesting, because there are going to be... Depends who's left, to be perfectly honest. I mean, is Grant Shapps and Penny Mordaunt still going to be in Parliament? Both of them won their seats in 2005. In seats that, frankly, were very much swing seats at the time. And I would expect them, I don't know how the boundaries are going to figure, them to be in great jeopardy this time. So who are you going to be left with? You're going to be left with the likes of Suella Braverman, Priti Patel, Kemi Badenoch, also James Cleverly. And what this is going to lead to is a battle for the soul of the Conservative Party. Because you can already see it. You can already see the right of the Conservative Party, the New Conservatives, the European Research Group Brigade, saying that we lost because the reason we lost was we weren't right-wing enough, we weren't Tory enough. And the real Tory who's out there, is called Nigel Farage, actually, for the Reform Party. So if you're a Tory supporter and you're thinking, well, hang on a second, Reform's just come out with a contract with all sorts of things that look pretty juicy and appealing to me, why don't I just vote for the real McCoy? Why do I want to vote for the second-raters here? And I think that there's going to be a real battle for the soul of the Conservative Party. Now, the interesting thing is, according to the latest poll, which is saying that they could be reduced for 115 seats, 61%, or 61 seats rather, of those are going to be new Conservatives, not new Conservatives, the One Nation Conservatives, and about 35 are going to be the right-wingers. So let's just see how it pans out, but I think that is where the battle is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, whenever we discuss this, say, why is the Tory party still sucking at airtime when the Labour lead now? If you look, we have had 4 opinion polls published in the last 24 hours. The one most people are talking about is the Ipsos poll, which gives Labour more than 450 seats, more than 250 majority, leaving the Conservatives with 115. And yet it's still the Conservatives that we discuss.
Well,
so why is this the small target part that Sir Keir Starmer's done actually it's proved so successfully?
Yeah, well, that has clearly been part of his strategy, which is, you know, what some people call the Ming Vase strategy. So risk aversion all the way. Don't say too much because you give people lines to attack you. And, you know, there's a lot of people who've been, in some cases, quite fairly, I think, critical of that. But I think there's also another aspect at play, which is that the level of meltdown we've been seeing in the Conservative Party for the last, couple of years, particularly the last year, it's just not normal, is it? And I do think that sometimes we have a tendency in the media to sort of focus on the twists and turns and the personalities because it's kind of fun stuff to write. And also, the evidence suggests that some readers really like engaging with it. And I think it's going to be something, after the next election, it's going to be an interesting contrast, actually, because I think on the one hand, if the polls are right, and you mentioned that Ipsos poll, Anna, you're going to have a Labour Party with a very, very large majority. And actually, I suspect governing politics, at least for the first couple of years, maybe the honeymoon won't last that long, is going to feel quite stable in a way that we're not used to. And then you are literally going to have a Conservative Party in meltdown. And I think we've got to be very careful because obviously, we want to be focusing accountability on the government, but there will be this temptation to focus on Conservative
continuing drama.
There was an interesting piece out from William Hague today in the Times talking about the fact that if you hand Labour such a big majority, this is not great for governance. I mean, the opposition does actually have a constitutional duty to hold the government to account. And when you're doing it with a rump, I mean, he had about 165 MPs, and he was saying it was already difficult enough. No one really cared what he was saying. If you're down below that, I mean, you're looking at the worst result in 200 years. This is not a great position to be in. Now, the Tories have already pivoted in an election campaign. I've never seen this happen before, where the likes of Grant Shapps are saying, don't hand Labour a supermajority. I mean, normally...
We're going to lose.
I mean, look, even the Lib Dems used to talk about winning, right? And the last Lib Dem leader...
So true.
They used to talk about winning. These guys are not even talking about winning anymore. So this whole thing is pretty embarrassing.
So what do they do with the last, couple of weeks left?
Well, I think that they're going on tax. They're going on tax. That's what they're doing.
Let's go on pictures first of all.
Sorry, pictures. Go on.
Rishi Sunak sort of did his best Ed Davey today, didn't he?
Oh, no,
chasing the sheep, going on a boat down in the West Country, in seats, to be fair, campaigning in seats where they've got majorities of thousands at the moment.
Shows how bad it is.
Absolutely. So this is in a seat in West Devon called Torridge and Tavistock. It's one of a new constituency, one of the ones that's been created through the boundaries getting withdrawn. And what we can see here is Rishi Sunak trying to feed some sheep, but in the end they just all run away from him. And you know what they say about working with children and animals. I think that's probably very true of political campaigning. They don't look too enamoured with the Prime Minister, but when you take a step back, he is campaigning for the votes of farmers in really what should be very safe Conservative constituencies. Torridge and Tavistock has got a majority of virtually 25,000. What is the Prime Minister doing campaigning?
They are much friendlier than Tory backbenchers, frankly. He's having a field day there, comparatively. I mean, look, to be fair to Rishi Sunak, can you imagine being him at the moment, dealing with this rabble around him? I mean, come on. I mean, look, he's made some missteps.
I don't feel too sorry for him.
There might be a sympathy vote coming. That's the point, isn't it?
OK, no one forced him, held a gun to his head to be Prime Minister. He's made some missteps. He's not particularly got great political nous or antennae. But also, he's running a party that's become a rabble. I mean, look,
that is true.
Look, people, when people out there, the great British public, come to Christmas time, it's the pantomime season. It lasts for a month. It doesn't last for years, right? And I think you're getting to the point now where people are just tired.
Are you
They're
saying
not
that the
an
Conservative Party is a bit of a pantomime?
Basically, I am, yeah. I mean, look, the point is this, and I say it with no great pleasure, no one's excited about Labour, but people are just tired of this nonsense they've had from the Tories.
OK, well, see if we can find the Daily Mail, but in the meantime, we'll go to the Times. Johnson shuns the campaign trail. Tories face red wall decimation. He's on holiday, to be fair, and isn't it a big birthday as well?
I mean, yes, I think it's his 60th, isn't it?
It's
60th,
60th, yeah.
today, yes. So
Or tomorrow, that's a newspaper,
I can't
yeah.
believe it. Lots of us had to cancel our holidays when Rishi Sunak announced this general election campaign, having a few weeks earlier sort of given indications to people working in politics and his MPs that, oh, no, you're fine, it's not going to be till the second half of this year, which technically it is. It's just it's a lot sooner than people thought. But Boris Johnson, he's off on holiday until 2 days before the election. So he has got involved. He's endorsed 50 Conservative candidates across the country. He's put his name, the story says, to tens of thousands of letters. But apparently CCHQ and Rishi Sunak's people are not too upset about the fact that Boris Johnson is going to be out of the country for most of the rest of the campaign because they think that he will be distracting.
OK, just very quickly, because there's loads of papers and loads of these stories. I interrupted you on tax, got the Daily Mail now, and the Daily Telegraph also going on tax and Labour. This idea of that if you go on tax, at least you're going to hit somewhere with this suggestion.
Well, what they're saying on tax is that Labour's come out very clearly, and they've said in their manifesto that they're not going to do, they're going to triple lock tax. What that means is there's going to be no increase on tax on workers. So no national insurance increase, no income tax increase, and no VAT increase. They've not said anything about capital gains tax, about inheritance tax, about rebasing the property values on council tax.
It was pushed hard on that today on the
They
radio,
pushed hard on that,
it?
and they're saying different ministers, different shadow ministers are giving different views on this. I think this is the only thing the Tories have, and I do think taxes probably will go up. Now, obviously, Starmer is not going to, and Rachel Reeves are going to be very assiduous about not showing any ankle on that whatsoever before the election. You can understand why.
I'm not going to give tax policy for the next 5 years away. So the question journalists now need to ask is, will there be none of these tax rises in the first year? And then people would know where we stand. But that's the next question.
That's an interesting question to
There's
ask.
a lot of people who think that taxes are going to have to go up, whoever is in government, because the Conservatives have committed to a bunch of public spending cuts. No one thinks they're achievable. No expert thinks that they're achievable. They've already cut public services to the bone. And they've basically done that to try and set a trap for Labour, who are trying to mimic what they're saying. As Paul Johnson of the Institute for Fiscal Studies has said, both parties are involved in a conspiracy of silence on this stuff. They're both as bad as each other. The Tories are trying to land one on Labour, but I'm sorry, they're just as bad. And if they were going to win an election, taxes would go up too.
But Starmer is also talking about savers, which is we'll come back to it later.
Come back. We've got more days to discuss this as well. More from the front pages coming up next, including this from The Guardian. Its headline that UK children are shorter and sicker due to poor diet. Discussing that next.
Beavers make very, very complicated habitats for water voles. So we've lost most of our wetlands in the UK over the last 150 years or so. So beavers burrowing, beavers dam making, beavers building, directing streams, making more braided water outlets, make these very, very messy, complicated wetlands. And they create lots of edges in those wetlands, which are perfect for water voles. Water voles are burrowing animals. They live next to watercourses. The problem we've had in the UK is that we've tend to have straightened our rivers, we've canalised them. For water voles predators, in particular the North American mink, that makes it very, very easy to basically just rattle through a watercourse and take out the water voles. I think in the 1960s we had about 8 million water voles. We're now down into the 100,000s. They're our most threatened mammal. Their numbers are dropping more than any other. So it doesn't matter whether that's England or Scotland, water voles are in trouble. Of all the species that we've reinforced or reintroduced, maybe water voles are the easiest. They used to be common throughout the UK, from lowlands right up into the higher mountain areas, which is one of their strongholds now. So they're mini gardeners, if you like. So beavers will produce the habitat for them to live in. Water voles will then enhance that habitat. So they're chopping away of things like sedges and grasses on bank sides. That will clear small areas. That will encourage more wildflowers. Their burrows become homes for other small creatures. And that burrowing as well helps to stir up the soil, brings nutrients to the surface. That encourages more plant and more diverse plant life. I think beavers are fundamental to sort of, if you like, soft flood management. And the schemes that are operating now all over the country are looking at both their ability to prevent flooding by holding up water, and more recently, especially for you down there in the southeast, in holding up water to prevent drought. So beavers create habitat in the the high headwaters of the stream, and you end up with a sump. It's a reservoir. They're replenishing groundwater supplies. So in a long dry period, that acts as a slow release. So that's another huge advantage of having beavers there.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Ali Miraj, broadcaster and commentator, and Sonia Soda, chief leader at The Observer. Welcome back to both of you. Some fascinating health stories, has to be said. The Guardian, first of all, Ali, UK children are shorter and sicker due to poor diet. What is the evidence here?
Look, I'm not sure I'm the best placed person to talk about this because I just had popcorn and a chocolate bar before I came in. But what it's basically saying is...
I can't believe you outed us, Ali. I had some popcorn.
Look, the point is this, that young kids, I mean, these are 5-year-olds, are shorter, fatter than they've ever been. This is according to the Food Foundation, a report by the Food Foundation. And this is just the latest piece of evidence in what we already know. There's massive marketing going on of ultra-processed foods. This is affecting kids' health. Type 2 diabetes now coming in younger and younger people. And you've got the likes of Henry Dimbleby, who was the government's food czar, who resigned in disgust about the fact that not enough was being done to try and clamp down on this marketing of ultra-processed foods. We know what the issues are. But yet this is endemic in our society now, and it's causing serious problems. It says over here, the average height of a 5-year-old is falling, obesity levels have increased by almost a third, and the number of young people diagnosed with type 2 diabetes has risen by more than a fifth. I mean, this is absolutely dire.
And I think what's happening particularly for the poorest children as well is we've got more hunger in society that we used to have. So numbers of families using food banks is on the rise, families living with food scarcity, there's a technical definition for it. We know those numbers have ticked up. And I think it's really telling, actually. I mean, over time, we've got taller as a species, as nutrition has improved, as societies get richer. That is a trend you expect to see. And the fact that we've now got the average height of 5-year-olds falling in this country, I think that is symbolic of two things. I think it is partly all the health things that Ali's talking about, but it's also, we've got rising levels of child poverty too.
Yeah, Americanisation of our food culture.
Yeah.
But no removal of the 2-child benefit cap.
Yeah.
That was a little
little dig
there, wasn't it? It was a dig,
yeah.
definitely.
Sorry, go on.
Meanwhile, in the Telegraph, Britain is 20 years behind Europe on cancer care. Where is this story? It's
at the top there.
Oh yes, sorry,
yes.
main story. Yes. Apologies. Yeah.
Yes. So this is something that we've known for quite a long time, actually, which is that in the UK we are not are at par with European countries, the top European performers on cancer care. And I think this statistic, though, in this new report is really significant. 20 years. So we are where the top European performers were in the early 2000s on key cancers like bowel cancer, for example. And it's a product of two things. So again, it comes back to our unhealthy lifestyles. So when you've got a lot in your environment that's obesogenic, or you're drinking, high drinking levels, etc., that creates the breeding ground for more cancer, as it were. So that's partly an issue, and high health inequalities, which we've got in this country, drives up. But it's also that we're not that great at diagnosing it early, and that's something that the NHS has been aware of and has been trying to improve. And then there's a question about care when you get diagnosed. And if you look at what's happened to NHS waiting lists, I mean, they have spiked so dramatically in the wake of the pandemic. So this is going to be very high, I think, at the top of Wes Streeting's to-do list.
30 seconds on this?
No, you're absolutely right. Cancer is a serious issue, and the waits for cancer care have been going up, and that's understandable, unfortunately, given the fact we've got a waiting list of 7.7 million. Streeting's whole argument is a preventative health service. He wants to put another 40,000 appointments a week into the health service. We'll see how successful he is. And he also wants to use some of the budget to fund it in the private sector as well. He's not being dogmatic about it.
OK, Ali, Sonia, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you for more in the 11, of course. Thank you. Let's take a look now at the weather, shall we? Temperatures will rise this week, so it will feel a bit more like June, with a small chance of a heat wave developing next week. Most places will have a fine start tomorrow, but it will be chilly in places, especially for rural parts of the north and west. Plenty of sunshine through the morning, best across Ireland, Northern Ireland and southeast England. It'll stay largely dry, but western Britain will see the odd shower, developing with Cornwall and Devon most at risk. Thicker cloud across the windy northwest of Scotland will bring more general rain by lunchtime. Feel cool there, warm though for most others. Well, let's talk about in Sky News at 11. Our press preview continues. Sky News witnessing migrants scrambling aboard dinghies off the coast of northern France, part of a series of special reports on migration crisis. It's a big election issue. Keep you abreast of all election news too. Lots in the newspapers.